Welcome to the Unlist. Today we're talking about the House of Initio, aka Initio Parfums Privés. Now I touched upon Initio a little bit in my Parfums de Marly video, but I didn't really go in depth with the Initio fragrances, their almost complete lack of a backstory, and just in general, the fact that they really poofed into existence back in 2015 and then began vomiting up fragrances that started sharing shelf space with all the other similar high-end luxury brands, you know, the usual suspects: Tiziana Terenzi, Amouage, Maison Francis Kurkdjian, let's see, the Raja Dove stuff, the Royal Crown stuff, all of those brands, which we now have even more luxury brands alongside, like the Harmonist and Mind Games. There's just so many of these really overpriced, relatively low quality brands that either just copy something else that's already popular and just fill out a range of like 15, 20 perfumes, and they all smell just like some other popular thing you've smelled from Creed or one of these other brands, right? They just parrot basically echo chamber whatever's really hot in that high-end segment, and the quality is basically indistinguishable from most of your $120, $200 fragrances, except you're paying like almost exactly double, if not more. And sometimes you get like a heavy brass cap. Sometimes you get way stronger performance, which that's the rub there, is they're like, oh, well, we can't deliver with quality because we're not willing to spend money on the formula. We'll make up for with concentration by just having less alcohol in the bottle, right? So you get basically nuclear powered garbage for an expensive price. You get $400, $375, whatever, gets you a 90 ml, 100 ml bottle of something with a heavy cap that smells like a cheap perfume you've over applied. You know, a clone of something, but over applied. It's a real rub, guys. And, you know, all of the YouTubers out there and influencers who shill the living fuck out of these brands. Oh, you got to get the hottest new this. You got to get the latest banger that, and it's one of these fly-by-night luxury brands. Or they've got their own line through Navitus, because Navitus is kind of like, you know, Navitus is the freaking, they're kind of like the lizard people of the niche world. They come in and take over the brains of the influencers and talk them into signing up to launch these Navitus ranges that are supposed to be the influencer's own perfume line. But obviously that person had little to no actual input on anything in their range. It's just the usual by the numbers luxury bullshit that they're then forced to hawk that stuff on their videos, right? To get a small cut, hoping they're going to sell a lot of bottles to the numbskulls that follow them. So, you know, Initio is just another one of those, right? Initio is just in that milieu. They're just in that little diaspora of these high cost, low quality, high performance, but low brow, just chemical warfare bullshit that tries to give you a pat on the back and a heavy brass cap, right? To make up for the fact that you've just been fleeced out of $400. And if you're one of those complete numbskulls that somehow sleepwalks through life and still makes $200,000 a year and drives a new Tesla, again, I don't know what I did wrong in life. You know, some of these like absolute idiots out here flush with cash. 33 sprays of Naxos, right? Need I say more? 33 sprays of Naxos. I just can't get over that. So Initio is basically a brand that caters to that kind of person, right? I'm not an H.L. Mencken fan by any means, because I feel like he was borderline fascist, but H.L. Mencken did have a good term for these people. He called them the bourgeoisie, right? because they're like the bourgeoisie. They're the bourgeois. They're the high-end people with money, but they're dumb as fuck. They're somehow very affluent and very influential on poor people, but they themselves are dumber than a box of rocks. So, and he called them that. And all of his political commentary that he did back in Baltimore, which is my home, it's why I know who he is, because he's from my hometown. But all the stuff he wrote where he would just basically dump on the, upper middle class person, which is now basically the millionaire, right? And that was the term he created for them, was the bourgeoisie. And that's, I feel like, the 33 sprays of Naxos guy, right? That's the bourgeoisie right there. And that's the kind of person that buys these brands. That's the kind of person that would effectively have a collection of Initio perfumes. And Parfums de Marly barely dodges that bullet. And I say barely because they fit in with that too. Clearly my video of Parfums de Marly, I was very diplomatic, I was very fair. But they really just, by the skin of their teeth, they dodge that bullet only because they at least tend to give first right of refusal to the good fragrances, right? So whenever a brief is put out, because remember, Parfums de Marly and Initio are the same company, right? They're the same effective brand. They're two separate labels, but they're the same company. When a brief is put out and a fragrance is created, it seems like Parfums de Marly gets the pick of the litter. The good stuff, right? They get Delina, and they get Leighton, and they get stuff like Perseus, and all this, and Percival, and love them or hate them, they're pretty decent fragrances. They're still really expensive. Not all of them are to my liking. I'm not a fan of Leighton, right? But you got to admit, love them or hate them, they're pretty well put together. They're just overpriced, okay? They could stand to be cheaper. But they get the pick of the litter. They get the okay stuff, the decent stuff, the stuff that I don't feel embarrassed wearing, okay? Then it seems like the leftovers, whatever was glossed over by Parfums de Marly, the second bests, the also-rans, that stuff goes over to Initio. And the real rub, the reason why I am coming so hard for this brand, the real rub is they take those second best, those sloppy second fragrances, and they short you like 35 mil and then upcharge you. So they're taking objectively worse fragrances that were picked over by the main brand, decreasing the volume per bottle, and then upcharging you. So you're getting a 120, 125 mil bottle of something like a Percival, okay? And you're paying $300-ish, whatever, for that. But if you come over to Initio, it's knocked down to 90 mil. So 35 mil is gone right off the top. And the price goes up another 50 bucks. So now you're breaking $400 for less fluid and a fragrance that is going to smell 9 times out of 10. It's worse than anything Parfums de Marly makes. And again, I'm not a big fan of Parfums de Marly. I've got a couple of them. I own some of the older ones. I've got Lipizan, I've got Ispizan, I got both of those, the early ones. And some of the other ones I do like. I like their Godolphin, which is kind of like Tuscan leather. I do like their Percival, which is kind of like Platinum Egoist. I do like, a Castor, which is kind of like their version of Gucci Guilty Oud or something. It's older than Gucci Guilty Oud, but it's the similar style of that. Or a Oud Ispizan, something like that, right? So I like the fragrances. They're just a bit out of my price range, so they're not my first choice. I will get something else. I will only really ever pick up a Parfums de Marly bottle if I find a good deal. If someone's selling a bottle that they sprayed like 10 times and they don't want it, I'll grab it for $1.25 or whatever. Call it a day. That's the only time I ever end up with one of their stuff, is if someone's selling it to me on the side or whatever, I get a tester. Otherwise, I pass. But Initio can't even get that far. Initio doesn't even get that far in the front door with me, because if I have a hard time plunking down money on Parfums de Marly because their stuff is good but not worth the price, or it's more synthetic in a bad way, because synthetic is not necessarily bad, but they'll offer up a fragrance that's synthetic in a way that's not appealing or overpowered, something that I could buy from someone else for less money and get a more distinguished fragrance. Like a lot of people have been comparing Perseus to to that discontinued Terre de Hermes Eau Très Fraîche. I disagree with that assessment, and I said as much, but like I can understand if you're able to get Eau Très Fraîche for a better price, even being discontinued, that's a better value than buying the Perseus, although there's nothing wrong with the Perseus per se. Now, Initio, on the other hand, comes out of nowhere. 2015. They are run by the mysterious Sonia. Now, my belief, and a lot of people in the fragrance community also think this too, that Sonia was just the wife of Julian Sprecher, the owner of Parfums de Marly. Possibly a sister, but more than likely his wife. It was her vanity label. It was, well, he's got his successful niche perfume business, right? And she's kind of sitting over here in the corner not doing anything. So she's like, hey, maybe I can have my own pet project perfume line too, just to stroke her ego or whatever, because when you're rich like that and you're bored, you have nothing left to do but kiss your own ass, right? So that's what a lot of these nobles in the old days got into painting and shit, or pottery, because they needed to feel like they were contributing somehow to the history of humanity, rather than just sit there and suck up all the wealth and be gigantic leeches trapped in silk, right? So they had to do something with their time to not be a tremendous waste of space. So that's probably a similar situation. She's like, well, hey, can I kind of like, do something too? Can I get involved? So he's like, okay, I'm going to give you Initio. Go knock yourself out. And a lot of those were just mods. Mods plucked from the briefs that were initially begun by Parfums de Marly. And I'm sure some of those were tinkered with and made significantly different. But most of the Initio things smell like they had their genesis in Parfums de Marly. They really do. And in most cases, like I said, 9 times out of 10, they smell worse. I have not smelled a single Initio perfume that I have liked better than any Parfums de Marly perfume, both male and female, because Initio doesn't gender. Initio is all unisex. And I know there are a lot of Parfums de Marly fragrances that are both women and men. I've smelled both ranges. But if you combine the men's and women's together and just call it all one brand, there's not a single thing, like I said, from Initio that I have liked better than anything I've smelled from Parfums de Marly. So to me, it's just sloppy seconds in a different bottle, a smaller bottle, at an upcharge. So I'm just like, man, they're just handing you the Vaseline. They are bending you over and handing you the fucking jar of Vaseline and saying, this is going to hurt, but it'll all be over soon. It's ridiculous, man. I don't even understand it. Now, gotten that out of my system. Those of you know that Advent recently bought both of those. Julian Sprecher cashed out, which further proves that they were the same company. Remember, guys, for a long time, Initio would not confirm that they were connected in any way to Parfums de Marly. They kept denying it, and Parfums de Marly kept denying it, to the point where they would actually get angry, right? I don't know if they ever threatened C&D on people. They threatened to take people out or whatever, shut down their channels or shut down their blogs for saying it. But I kind of think maybe they did. I think I read somewhere that someone got in big trouble, got lawyered up on because they were claiming this. But now it's clear as day, right? It can't be refuted now because they were sold together as a package. As a package deal, they were sold to Advent. So it's now public knowledge. It's now public knowledge that they were always the same company. So I feel sorry for that person. If they did get lawyered up on, I feel sorry for them because they were just a little too early. They were a little early on that shit, and they got in trouble. And they got threatened with a slap suit. They would have got like that into oblivion, and that would have sucked. No one deserves that. Some dudes spending their time on YouTube yakking 25 minutes at a clip just because it's fun and they love perfume and they're interested. They're not putting any real money into this. They don't deserve to get sued. What the fuck? It's one of the reasons why I don't really talk about Bond and stuff, because Bond's the same way. Fragrance Dubois is also the same way. All of these highfalutin niche brands that literally want to go out there suing content creators for libel and stuff because they have opinions or because they learned something that they shouldn't have learned, maybe. And it's not necessarily incorrect, but it's an inconvenient truth that they want to bury, so they muscle up with their lawyers. That is fucked up. So brands that do that tend to get less respect from me, and that is one of the reasons why I also tend to not really look into any Bond fragrances. I've smelled a few. Fragrance Dubois is the same thing. I've smelled a few. Haven't really invested any time in trying to acquire their stuff because I just feel dirty. I feel dirty when I own a fragrance from a brand that goes around suing people. It just makes me feel dirty. Makes me feel like they're a bunch of whiny, entitled little bitches that, again, have so much money and so much privilege and are so used to stepping on people. Like their parents never told them no when they were growing up as kids. So when they hear the word no, they want to melt down and flip shit because someone tells them no. Someone does this, and they can't handle that. So they go psycho mode. They go Patrick Bateman, naked down the hallway with the chainsaw in hand, cutting people up because someone told them no. That is some dystopian shit right there. That is some 80s horror movie stuff. So, and I don't support brands like that. So that's one of the reasons why I stay away from them. And even though I can't confirm that Initio or Parfums Privés did try to sue anyone, just the fact that there are rumors about it, the fact that rumors persist, make me kind of think twice, right? I think a little bit twice before I go, let me go buy a product from these people, knowing that they go around doing this, right? It just, again, I feel dirty. I feel like I need to go bleach my eyes out or something. So the perfumes themselves, not a lot to say. It's why I've spent 17 minutes of this video so far and haven't once mentioned really anything about Initio in terms of their fragrance style. A lot of them do smell like retreads or ideas for Parfums Privés that were rejected, that didn't fit the aesthetic of the PDM brand and thus got moved over to Initio. They have a couple standout lines, though, things that don't quite fit the mold. And one of those, the only one I'm going to talk about today, is the Oud for Greatness range. I know some of you are going to say, oh no, what about Rehab? Oh no, what about Blessed Baraka? Oh no, what about Psychedelic Love or Atomic Rose, right? You're going to say, what about these? And I'm going to say, what about them? What about Musk Therapy? I don't care, right? So I've smelled them. They're unremarkable. You can read my reviews on them. I've got nothing to say. But Oud for Greatness, I do have something to say about, because that is probably the most influential of the bunch. The one fragrance from the Initio range has actually made a dent, not just in the online fragrance community or the luxury buyer in general, but in the industry. Other fragrance brands have caught on to what Initio was doing with that fragrance. They were picking up what they were putting down, basically. So that is one attaboy I can give Initio, one job well done, as they managed to make one thing that actually matters. One fragrance range that people actually give a fuck about, and it's Oud for Greatness. Do I like it? Not really. I'm not a fan of it. I understand why it has fans. I understand why it's important, which is why I'm talking about it right at the end of the video, right? I'm capping off my little rant about Initio and how bullshit they are by talking about the one thing they did actually do halfway decent. It's basically BR540. They're taking the BR540 formula with the really smooth Varanis and the saffron materials and the cashmeran musk and all that shit, and they just kind of plunk in a synthetic oud note and they plunk in lavender. That's it. That's all. Game over. Pack your things. Time to move on. It's basically BR540 plus lavender plus fake like Tom Ford oud. So if you like that smooth saffron sweet blob, that ethyl maltol blob of a fragrance that is BR540, if you like that and you wouldn't mind some lavender in there and you wouldn't mind some synth oud in there, some Tom Ford oud, then you might like You might like Oud for Greatness, but apparently it did so well that it kind of made the brand. And they've done and gone ahead and made 2 more in this series. The second one, called Oud for Happiness, is really just a ripoff because it's Haltan. It's Parfums de Marly, Haltan, or Haltane, whatever, under a different name. You can literally tell that when Parfums de Marly released Haltane, or Haltan, for Harrods originally, it was a Harrods exclusive. You can tell that they wanted to basically go behind Harrods back and double release to the public. They wanted to double dip, right? But they can't release Haltan to the public. It's a Harrods exclusive. So they kind of bent their own rules by taking a mod, a different version of Haltan, and putting it in an Initio bottle. So they can put that in other stores, Selfridges, Nordstrom, wherever Initio is sold. So they literally went like this. They gave Haltan to Harrods, then they kind of went over here and said, okay, and here's Oud for Happiness for everybody else. And then the extra rub, the double rub, this shows you what kind of shitlords they are. No backbone, no integrity. They ended up releasing Haltan to the public anyway. So now Haltan is in all the stores. It came off exclusive like within a few months. It was only like an exclusive for like 2 or 3 months, and it was already everywhere else. And the Harrods logo was pulled off the bottle. So they just really wanted money coming out of both ends. They wanted to be vomiting money and shitting money at the same time. Double money. Just so fucking greedy, man. Disgusting. And Haltan is not a good fragrance. So Oud for Happiness is not a good fragrance either. Then they came out with this Oud for Greatness Neo. And I dug out the sample of it I had from like a long time ago, a couple weeks ago when I first reviewed it. I can smell the dry down. The dry down's still here. The rest of it's gone, but I remember the opening. The opening was basically just a greener version of Oud for Greatness. So they took Oud for Greatness with the lavender and the fake oud and all that stuff. And they added in more just like green notes. So we're talking like galbanum and cis-3-hexanol type stuff, grassy notes, sour, a little bit more pyrrolone type stuff to give you a sour green kind of feeling. And then he also tried to make it more of a fougere. So they increased the patchouli, they added some geranium in there, and they made it more barbershoppy. So it's almost like Oud for Greatness Neo is like if you took Oud for Greatness and you put in some Zaharoff, or you put in some Rive Gauche Pour Homme, or one of those fragrances. Tom Ford, Fougere, the discontinued one, not Platine, Fougere d'Argent. So take like Fougere d'Argent or Rive Gauche Pour Homme or Zaharoff Signature Pour Homme. Take one of those fragrances with the clove and the shaving cream vibes, all that stuff, and mix that in. So it's like, take Oud for Greatness, spray on Rive Gauche, and layer them together, and that is what Oud for Greatness Neo smells like. Now, considering that Rive Gauche Pour Homme is discontinued, and they want like $500 fucking for it, so you're not going to buy that in 2024. And then Zaharoff Pour Homme is about $200 for a 120. So that's a better deal right there. But yeah, most of these fragrances that are in this train of thought are discontinued. You know, the Tom Ford is discontinued, right? The Rive Gauche is discontinued. The only other option you have in this particular style is the Zaharoff. So if it came down to me buying the Zaharoff, which I actually like and want to own, I want to own a bottle of the Zaharoff, or spending like $400 for 90 ml of this, and I get the similar dry down with the barbershop stuff, but then I gotta suffer through that blobby Oud for Greatness stuff that I don't like, right? It's a no-brainer, guys. I'm not gonna pick this. I'm gonna pick the Zaharoff, but you know what? It's whatever. That's it, guys. That's my assessment on Initio. You can have your opinion. It's fine. We can be friends, but that's how I feel about it. This has been The Unlist. Catch you next time.